Hey, welcome back. Today we got a great project for you. It's a small little stoop off the side door project that we did a couple weeks ago. I want to show you what I have here. Got the door we installed on an earlier video. We got about a 16-inch drop down to the walkway pavers. Today I want to do a project to put a small stoop here. I did not want to put some crappy little stoop. We're going to do a very nice stoop with some rail. So stick around. It's going to be a great video. You're going to learn a lot. Show you a couple things about deciding how high you want your steps for your risers. I've established a level point. I roughly know where the level point is from the walkway over to the bottom of the level. But what I really want to establish is from the top of the door threshold to the walkway. And what I have, level point, about there, got about 16.5 inches. What that means is I could go with 2 risers. National code is about max 8.25 inches high. I never want to go 8.25 inches high. It's too high. There's going to be a lot of traffic going in and out of this door. Reason is this is going to be Lauren's home bakery. We are zoned here for a small bakery allowed in the house. So everything has to meet code, but I want to make it a comfortable step for people to come up, go inside, pay for their baked goods, leave. So there's going to be traffic here. We're also going to be bringing things in and out of here constantly. I don't want the 8.25 inch riser. So 16.5, our next choice is to divide it down into about 3 equal risers, which is about 5 3/8 light. So each riser will be about 5 3/8. That puts me about 5.5 right up under this lip. I could run the decking down and make it an equal riser to the top here. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put our band board, which is the treated framing, attached to the block that's behind this brick. I'm going to put our band board right up under this threshold, and then the decking on top of that. Makes life easier. It only changes the height maybe a 1/2 inch. Typically when you do stairs, you want every riser exactly the same. There's actually a code for that. If one riser is out even maybe 3/4 inch, that as a human body walks up the stairs or down the stairs, they're going to feel the difference. People can trip. That's why it's a code to have each riser the same. The only difference is when you are stepping into a doorway. We could put this even with the concrete threshold. We could put it halfway. We could put it anywhere we want. There is no code as long as it's under 8.25 inches. So I think I'm going to tuck that underneath here. I'm going to get it started laying out the size, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Got some layout marks in place. First, I want to show you the yellow layout lines. That's about the size I want. And what I've decided to make is about 74 inches wide by about 31.5 out. And what that means is I designed this thing for 6-foot decking to go on the landing. Then on the outside, I want to hide the outside with about a 2.25 inch or 2.5 inch band. All along the side of this landing, I'm going to put white PVC. So it all ends up being my framing is going to be 74 inches wide. I planned this for the size of the decking. I don't want to go any wider. I don't want it to make it look ridiculous with the width compared to the depth. So that's number one. There's my mark. The red mark right there is the end of the framing. The line in the mortar joint right there is my level line all the way across underneath. That is my framing lines. The other thing you'll notice is I have to dig some holes. Even though this is a small little landing and you probably could rest this on the ground, it would move each season. Winter, the ground heaves. I want to do this to code. I don't want it to move. I'm going to have a 3-foot step here that's going to come over the pavers about 4 inches. So I'm going to have a 3-foot step here, 1 step up to the landing, then finally a step into the room. So that's considered 3 risers. What I want to do is I want to dig footings. I want to dig these out. Here in the mid-Atlantic region, the frost line is 24 inches. They add another 6 inches for safety factor. So I'm going to dig 30 inches down. It's going to be about a 16-inch wide footing hole. I'm going to pour about 8 to 10 inches of concrete at the bottom of the hole. That way my post can rest right on top of the footer, and I'm going to backfill with dirt. This is going to be bolted into the house, so it's not going to go anywhere. I don't need any lateral support or anything like that. Like I said, in your area, you might be able to just sit this on the ground, and it'll be fine for a couple years, and then eventually it'll move out of level. It's all what you want to do. This meets code, and that's kind of how I want to build it. So I'm going to get to digging these and pour them, and I'll be done with that. Got to a stopping point. I want to show you what I've done so far on this. I got the footings poured, filled with very, they don't look 16 inches, but the bottoms are bellied out. Concrete's poured about a foot thick, and down at the bottom where I bellied them out, they're roughly 16 by 16. So I got a good footing there, one on the other side. Got this ledger board up, band board, whatever you want to call it. And I got my little helper there, a little block of wood. It was a great help. I think I'll name him Charlie, because I can't pay him much, but he's my helper for today. It helped prop this board up. And what I did, I put some power nails in, the 22 caliber shots, just to hold this board in place. Before I did that, I laid out joist hangers. These are not 16 inches on center, which is typical when you lay out floor joists. What I did, since the width of this thing, if I laid them out on 16 inches on center, the very last one would be really close to the edge. It would look ridiculous. So I spaced them. I brought them closer than 16 on center. They're closer to more like a foot on center. It's not a big deal. I'm not breaking any wood, any decking on any of these. So it's not a huge deal to lay them out less space between the joist. You never want to go more than 16 inches on center when you're using composite decking. It'll act like a trampoline. You won't be happy with the results when you're walking across the deck. A couple other things. There's a red line. That is my line where I drilled holes. I'm sending anchors into the brick veneer, past the brick veneer, into the structural block. I don't know if you watched my other video of this door install, but brick on newer houses, I'm not talking 100-year-old, 200-year-old houses, newer houses of this 21st century, that brick is just a veneer. It is not meant to hold a deck, especially if you're up high, a big 2-story deck. So try to get those things. Matter of fact, it's code to get them into the block or a band board structural wood behind the brick veneer. This has block behind the brick. Other thing, we don't need Z flashing here. Normally, if you were doing a wood this was a wood wall in your house, you'd take a piece of bendable vinyl or rubberized flashing, and you would make sure flashing goes on here underneath your siding, and then the decking goes on top. What that does is keeps water going down into your wood frame. When you have a brick veneer like that, nothing's going to rot out. You don't need flashing. One thing I will tell you about flashing here, don't use any of aluminum. Since they've changed the formula in treated wood, I guess in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, if you use aluminum flashing or you put this up against aluminum, it will rot that aluminum out. The chemical reaction will destroy the aluminum. It has a chemical reaction. It's not allowed. Remember, flashing, either bendable vinyl, rubberized material, or some other material other than aluminum. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and frame this out. Next scene will be all this framed out with the 4x4s in the hole, ready to be decked. Well, there you have it. A framed stoop. I'll go over a couple things. Bolts go all the way through, past the brick into the block. Got those in. They're about 1 foot on center. Usually when you do a deck that's up off the ground, you would go high, low, high, low, high, low, etc. This deck for a 2x6 bolted onto the house is just not enough room. Hangers on each one and a framing clip on the end units. The front is a double 2x6. Now this is roughly about 6 foot, a little bit over. Double 2x6 with this short span of joist will be sufficient for this. If I left it as a single, eventually you might get a little bit of a dip in the stoop. We don't want that. As you have longer joists, say like 12 or 14 foot, maybe 2x10s, this double 2x6 would not be sufficient. So you have to look up your local codes, what you're going to do. Next step is I want to get this thing square. I could use a square, which I originally did to get the footing locations, just a regular framing square. Best way to do this is you take diagonal measurements, corner to corner, corner to corner. If they match, then you have a square deck frame. You don't want a trapezoid. It will not look good. It'll be a mess. It'll be difficult to put any type of decking on. So I measured from point A to point B. It was about 80 3/4. Point A to point B, about the same. You just push the deck back and forth to get it square to where the measurements are equal. I got it level. I'm going to go ahead and put this post in. Now if you notice, I got a post and it's notched 1.5 inches. And I know what some of you are saying out there, you can't notch a rail post. Well, yes you can. In this situation I can, because this rail that's going here is mainly for decorations. Decoration. I don't know anyone who has fallen maybe 10 inches to their death. So this stoop does not require a rail. That notched area, a lot of locations throughout the United States, national code on exterior decks may not allow you to notch your deck rails. So check before you build. I've been in situations where I've shown a notched deck rail on a set of plans. The plans were approved. Not only were they approved, they were stamped right over top the rail detail that showed a 1.5 inch notch, and they would not allow it once the deck was built. The 4x4s had to be replaced. Check with your local codes if you're building with a permit. In this situation, this deck is going to sit on that notch, which is great. That doesn't break any codes. Notches work well with compression, weight going down. The problem they went
years ago they went without notches on a lot of deck rails because a few people eventually notched this a little more than 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. Then before you know it, there was very little wood left to bolt the rail either to the outside of the deck or bolted inside. And it created a weak point. And as you all know, most sun decks are a gathering of people, cookouts, people lean against the rail. It's not like a rail in your house. In your house, if you walk in your house now and you have a newel post at the bottom of your stairs, chances are it may be notched. It's plenty strong enough. I did want to go over that because I don't want anyone to follow my guidelines and notch the rails and get angry later. Check your local codes. This, it's fine. It will carry the weight on each corner of this beam here, and it'll also make a nice solid deck rail here, and a little bit across the front. We're gonna have another 4x4 here. That's it. I'm ready to level, put this post in, and I'll show you how I notched on this post. Got the post in. It's notched 1.5 inches into that beam, so it is carrying that beam, front beam weight. Also got some framing screws into it. I'm going to take some through bolts and lag it in later on. Then all this extra dirt I'm going to backfill once I get the post perfectly plumb, and it'll stay there. Once I put the decking on, it'll lock it in and keep it square the entire time. Now I'm going to show you how to do these notches. I'm on top of my concrete footing. Concrete's down there, and yes, as I mentioned before, it is bellied out to be about a 16-inch diameter concrete base. Right there we have about 21 inches, a little bit light, to the bottom of that joist. So that's the bottom of our notch. You'll also notice we have a level there, and we're level across the front. Come down a hair on the right, but we're looking good. So that's our notch, 21 inches to the bottom. I'm going to leave about 38 inches of 4x4 sticking up. That should be good enough for put 1-inch decking on this. Rail height's going to be about 36.25, 36.5, and then I have a little cap going on top of this. So that'll work here. I'll go ahead and show you this notch. Here I have the 4x4, 21 inches to the bottom of the notch. That's the bottom of the front beam. The width of the joist I'm using, which is about 5.5. I'm doing 1.5 inch notch. So I set the saw for 1.5 inches, and I'm leaving about 38 inches sticking up out of the deck, which, by the way, it doesn't matter right now. I can cut it later. I'm putting these white sleeves over it. So even if I wanted to come up a little bit higher, white sleeves are 39 inches. They'll be put on last. I don't want to show you that. Usually we'll take, after I get these cuts made, I will take the Sawzall. Try to do this one-handed. And I will slide that Sawzall blade down in there, and I will finish the cut. I will finish the cut all the way to the 1.5 inch notch on each top and bottom, both sides, and that notch will pop right out of there. Go ahead and get that cut. If you don't have a reciprocating saw and you want to just use a circular saw, a lot of people will set the saw at 1.5 inches and they'll just make kerf cuts, several kerf cuts. Then you take a hammer and you just knock those chips right on out. You take, once the chips are removed, you would clean the notch out with a nice sharp chisel. Either way is fine, whatever works for you, as long as you get that notch out and you got a nice clean cut. and go ahead and put this into that corner on top of the footing. Give you guys a look kind of how this is going to look. There's going to be another post on both sides of the door. This step here is only going to be 3 foot, maybe 42 inches wide. So it's going to come here, decking white around the band board of this. I did want to mention a couple things. You know, before you write me and tell me, hey, you can't bury that 4x4. It's not allowed. Well, every part of the country is different in the United States. In different countries, it might be different. Here in the mid-Atlantic, you can bury a ground contact rated piece of treated wood. Actually, it's preferred instead of putting it in concrete. If this was a bigger deck, I would have secured this post to the footing with an approved anchor. So by no means do I want you to compare this little stoop to something that's 10 feet off the ground and will hold 20 or 30 people at any given time and needs wind load ratings and things like that. Anytime you do a deck, a real size big sun deck, you are going to secure the post to the concrete footing. There's several ways you can do that. Got a deck project coming up in the future. Maybe I'll show you the different ways we could do that. But for this small little stoop, this is perfect. This is actually overkill. That's it. I'm going to put some lags into these posts. I got to cut 4x4s here. The rail will go from here back to the wall on both sides, and I'll get this step built and decked. I don't want to get too far along before I show you what's been done. Lags into the rail behind this. I recessed the lag so it didn't interfere with this white trim. 1x8 with a miter joint here all the way around. The very first piece of decking, I did an overhang of about 3/4 of an inch. Typically that's what's on a stair tread. So I'm going to have about 11 and a half inch tread here, then up to here. What I'm going to do here, trim out with a ripped piece of decking. And the reason I'm doing this border around it is because, let me show you on this. This is Trex. A lot of it has a kind of a channeled out bottom to it. It does not look very nice on the edge when you leave them hang over. The other option is to run this trim board up and hide the edge of the decking, which a lot of people do. Either way is fine, whatever you prefer. I liked to see the decking overhang the trim, so this is an easy way to do that. You run a border around the deck. Same thing would be if you were building a large sun deck. These miters, I don't have to worry about getting all this really close and tight because you have that white sleeve. Then I'm going to have a base trim that comes out about 1.25 inches all the way around. So I have plenty of play here. I've gotten to a point where I want to show you a couple things I've done. I still need to put the decking on, but you can see how the rim joist, I put kind of a trimmed piece on the edge. I have enough of the joist to screw the deck to, or I'm going to use hidden fasteners on most of these. These posts here, they are screwed in the back with framing screws. They're secure. I wanted to get a little bit of section of rail. These posts are not, they're just, these sleeves are just going there to get them out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and put the final step in, and I have 2 points. I'm going to make this step up. It's about 38 inches wide. I do want to level off and find out the exact points of the height of the step.
I'm ready to install this final step here. What I've discovered, two of these pieces of decking runs about 11 1/4 inches together with a gap in the middle. So that's approximately what the tread is going to be, minus a little bit of a nosing, little overhang. So before I do anything, I know my deck is level. The paver's probably not so much. It runs with the grade. It may be close. So I want to come out on each side of the step and get an exact measurement. On this side, I'm about 11 inches on the right side of the stairs. If I move over to the left side of the stairs, get a level point, I'm at about 10 3/4. So what that means is this final step, I want to rip down the framing of my riser to get a nice level final step. I'm going to do that, put some blocking against this black piece of wood and screw this whole thing, this final tread, use framing screws to screw it to the deck. It'll never come undone. This, below these pavers, there's about 6 inches of crush and run sand, and it's compacted. This is not going to move for a very long time. I'm not worried about any footers or anything like that for just a single step. The other thing I want you to notice is in this little bit of space here, a lot of times if you put lattice to block in the bottom of the deck, keep any critters out or anything from going underneath. Lattice, it's too small of an area to use lattice or anything like that. What I do sometimes, I'll do a piece of treated wood, I'll paint it black. I can bring that mulch right up to that black board when I'm done. I'll be putting mulch down in the spring and some pavers here on the left and right of the steps. So when it's done, you're not going to be able to see underneath this little stoop, and I'm not going to have little critters crawling underneath here, nesting, bees, things like that. So the next stage, I want to get this framed. See you in a little bit. All the framing's done here, and I want to go over a couple things with this decking. Been fighting the weather for a couple days, cold, rain. It's going to rain today, so I want to get this knocked out. So I got the decking cut to go between both the end pieces of decking. A couple things I want to show you. There are different types of decking. There are grooved, and those grooves are mainly to use hidden fasteners. So if you notice, when you go to buy decking, there's square edge and there's grooved edge. Square edge is usually used on stairs or around the perimeter of a deck where you need a finished look. The hidden fastener is just a little metal or plastic clip that goes into this groove. Stainless steel screw is screwed down. The deck is fastened to the joist without face screwing it. Here I use some color coded screws. They do a self pilot hole. It's a close match. It's something I had in the barn. You can get exact match depending on your manufacturer. The other thing I want to show you is some of these composite pieces have grain. The grain is a repeating pattern. So you could run all the grain pattern the exact same way when you run your decking. Or what I like to do is I'd like to flip it, run it randomly, so there's really no continuing pattern. So the first thing I'm going to do here is pull these sleeves up. They're loosely fitted, and I'm going to notch the decking around these posts. Put my first piece on, continue into the wall. Final piece will be notched around the threshold, the concrete threshold. Then I want to show you what some rail measurements. Now, as far as the rail, I've already cut the pieces. Like I said, I'm trying to fight this rain, get ahead of everything. So the pieces are cut. And the way this works is every rail is different. I'm going to go to the brick wall to the sleeve. It's about 27 inches and it's even on both sides. And the front is about 8 3/4. So I've already got the top and bottom rail cut for that. And what I did on this particular rail, I deducted about 5/16, 3/8 of an inch off the total measurement. That gives it some play and it gives it room for clips to set in these rails. Every rail is different and I'll show you what I mean here. This particular rail is sold at a big box store. It is composite with a PVC coating. This makes the top rail a little bit stronger. There's other rails where they have metal inserts. They're aluminum inserts for strength. Since these are short sections, we won't be using a bottom brace that would typically sit down on the deck, and it would help brace or keep from sagging like a 6-foot section of rail. These pieces are cut, and the way they are cut, so I told you the measurement's 27 minus about 3/8 of an inch. And the way they're cut, you just don't measure from the end to cut your rail. You want these balusters centered. So these two end balusters are roughly the same distance off of the end. Then I cut both sides. Then I matched it up with the bottom rail. And that's how you get a rail where all the balusters are plumb and your spacing is fairly equal all the way across from your wall to your post or post to post, whatever way you're doing it. I'm going to knock this stuff out. I'll show you the finished product in a few minutes.
Final product. Don't mind the water on the decking. It's been raining. Now it's snowing here. It's been a tough little project to get in because of the weather. But let me give you a kind of a wide shot of this. This little landing, it didn't take much. It's an easy project for you to learn basic deck building skills. The rail, I didn't show you installation techniques because everyone is different. But for the most part, everyone has some sort of fastening bracket to the post, and then they usually have some sort of a finishing clip that hides the bracket. As you can see, the balusters are spaced evenly. I went over that in the last scene. The decking has the border around the final step, and as I showed you in the first scene, we have about 5.5 inches up to the top surface, 5.5 inches to the landing, 5.5 inches, 5 1/4, 5.5 into the actual floor height. So that is much better than having two risers at about 8 1/4. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is the entrance to a small bakery attached onto a house. There is going to be foot traffic in here more than normal, more than a normal residential. I will paint this wall. This door was recently installed. And the brick was patched in another video, but this wall will get painted, this window replaced, and I may do a little roof. I don't know, we don't have much of a area over top to get a roof in there, but there is a good overhang here for deliveries, things like that, to sit there where it won't get wet. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something on basic deck building, and please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.